Good afternoon, everyone. Horizon House is such a special place that we can fill a room to standing room only and make more space when it comes to art. We are so grateful to be here today. We have so much gratitude and we're so thankful to the Spafford family for this phenomenal gift. This is a day that we've been looking forward to for quite some time. I think it was a little over about 6 months ago when the chair of our art committee and Danny Carr came and said, we have a great opportunity for Horizon House. And what a great opportunity it was. I remember Danny gave me some printouts of some of the information about your father and your husband's work. And we just, again, are so grateful to have this special collection here at Horizon House. It has a wonderful home because, again, as you can see, we love art. It is, just integral to our culture. Spafford's work is exhibited in public venues throughout the country: museums, galleries, private collections, art shows, and much more. The original 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird hangs at the Seattle Opera House. We are so honored to be able to have the prints of that particular collection. This extends the collection. The collection is extended, all throughout the Pacific Northwest. Stafford was a prominent member of a set of artists teaching at the University of Washington who succeeded the artists of the Northwest School, of which Horizon House has a wide collection. So this collection ushers in a new period for us because Spafford is a preeminent representative of contemporary Northwest art, and this extends our art into the 20th century. Again, we want to say thank you. His work is important to us. As you know, we have Jacob Lawrence's work. Jacob Lawrence, and I understand, they were friends, taught together. So thank you again. I want to turn it over to our wonderful chair, John Pound.
Thank you, Erica. I'm putting on my glasses because I have a story to tell you, and I don't want to leave any of it out. If I can get them on. That was a beautiful introduction, and That was a beautiful introduction. Thank you for the reminder. Yeah. I want to thank everyone for coming out here to this special occasion. You've all seen the striking black and white prints that are on the Terry Street entry hall wall across from the library. We're now here to make an emphatic statement of our thanks to these generous donors who have given those Michael Spafford prints to Horizon House. Before we do that, there are also some other folk to thank. For that, I have to give you a short background story. Horizon House's good fortune in acquiring this gift of exceptional art actually began a long time ago. Danny and Jack Carr, in the front row here, now happily for us, prominent members of the Horizon House community, became neighbors and good friends of the artist, Michael Spafford, and of Elizabeth, Michael's wife, and also an artist of note in her own right, many years back. They were not the only neighbors either. It was quite a neighborhood. Horizon House residents Margaret and Bob Liston, Judy Talley, and Pat and David Graves were also there. And as you can guess from those names and what you know of their creative spirits, it was quite a lively place. One expression of that was that Danny and Elizabeth, Margaret and Judy, were all founding mothers of the Mother Pluckers ukulele band. Years later, one Mother Pluckers practice session turned to a conversation about Horizon House's collection of Northwest art, its quality, and the appreciation that the Horizon House community has for art of quality. But it also came up that we have a stronger showing of Northwest art from earlier times. We didn't have enough on our walls to give our new residents and our visitors a good idea of the wonderful things that have continued to happen in Seattle and Pacific Northwest art. Thus was born the idea that, of course, an example of work of an artist who always lived in Seattle, but was known nationally and internationally, was just what we needed. Who else but Michael Spafford? It could carry the story of Northwest art into contemporary times, as Erica has said. Danny and Elizabeth continued that conversation for some time. Elizabeth suggested that she and Spike could help, and thus began the gift to us of this important work by an eminent artist and a much admired UW teacher. So here we are to give our heartfelt thanks to Elizabeth and Spike and ask them to add some personal perspective on what is now a central jewel of Horizon House art, Michael Spafford's interpretation of the Wallace Stevens poem, 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird. Now please welcome our guests and honored donors.
It's on. Yes, you can hear me. I know so many of you from such a long time ago that I forget that actually most people don't know who Michael Spafford is or was. And I thought I would tell you a little bit about when we came here and a little bit about him. He was born in Palm Springs on an Indian reservation, November 6, 1935. He died January 29th, 2022. When he was a small child, he was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes, which meant he spent a lot of time at home reading mythology and drawing pictures. As a teenager, he was skilled enough to work in a small advertising agency where he made drawings for things like house paint and backpacks. He went to Riverside College for 2 years, and he graduated at the top of his class. And then he was considering becoming a cartoonist, but he wanted to keep working at the advertising agency in Riverside. So if he went to Pomona, he could go home on weekends and work in Riverside. So that's what he did. At Pomona, he did cartoons for the newspaper, and then on the weekends he went home. So Pomona is kind of, I also went to Pomona, so it's kind of a college where some people major in things, but most people can't because they have so many requirements that you have to take that the first 2 years you're just busy taking requirements. And then you find out that, oh, all those people that are pre-med, they're the ones taking zoology. So he did a lot of, he was very interested in mythology, and he was interested in art history. And so he wanted to be a painter. He painted all the time, but he decided to go on to school in art history. So we both went to Harvard, he in art history, and I got a teaching certificate. But after, we were there 1 year, we were there a whole year, but in the middle or towards the end of the year, we went to a party in New York, which was given by Peter Seltz, who had been made head of the Museum of Modern Art. And he had been at Pomona teaching German expressionist painting and a lot of other art history courses. He was very good, and so it was kind of a new job for him. So we went to this party. We drove to New York from Boston. We went to this party, and it changed our lives because Mark Rothko was there and his wife, and there was an art historian there who got in an argument with Mark Rothko. The art historian was a critic, and he had written an article about Mark Rothko, about one of Mark Rothko's brightly colored paintings, but he had a reproduction that was going into a magazine that was in black and white. And Rothko said, how can you write about my painting as a black and white illustration when it's a colored painting. And the art historian said, well, my readers are going to see it in black and white. So it doesn't need to be, I don't need a color reproduction. I don't even need to see it in color because I've seen other paintings. Well, that so disturbed Mike that when we were driving home, he said, I don't think I'm going to become an art historian. And so we finished out the year, and we didn't know what to do, so we went to Mexico, where my mother lived. So in Mexico, Mike did a little teaching and at Mexico City College, and I sold art in a park on Sundays. And we lived there for 3 years until I became pregnant and somebody had to have a job. So I didn't say that my mother was in the Foreign Service, and she was director of the Benjamin Franklin Library. So she was not home in the daytime. And somebody actually gave my husband a whole building to paint in that they were afraid was going to be taken over by squatters. And it had no electricity, so he only painted in the daytime. But it was nice because sometimes we would go there and then we would see all these little footprints in the dust so that we knew there were people going through the building. And after we left Mexico after 3 years and came to Seattle in 1963. And I found a few letters that told about Mike's arrival in Seattle, and I thought you might recognize some of this. He wrote, it's now 2:30 a.m., and I just got a room at the Meany. The flight was very smooth, and except for 3 things, it would have been perfect. First, there was a long delay in Los Angeles. Second, they flew to Boeing Field instead of SeaTac Airport. Third, they lost my cardboard box between Los Angeles and Seattle. I filled out a form, and they're tracing it. Naturally, by the time I'd finished all the red tape, the last special bus had left for downtown. Since I had to take a cab, I went right to the Edmund Meany Hotel in the University District. The Meany Hotel was the hotel with a room in every corner. And when he got there, he had a bird in his room. So he got the bird out. I remember thinking, well, it was not easy because he'd never gotten a bird out of a room before. And so then he spent the next few weeks renting a house, and one of the things was he complained how expensive it was, $150 a month. And he started his classes. On September 30th, he wrote, I had my first class, basic drawing, 8:30. The class tonight is basic drawing, and tomorrow I have basic design and basic drawing. Everything is so damn basic, I can't believe it. So once he got the house, and it came unfurnished, but with a few things that students had left behind. So he started painting, and he said, I thumbtacked up the Laocoon painting in the space between the living room and dining room, and it looks quite nice, but I will take it down when you come because it messes up the traffic pattern, which means actually that it went right across the hallway. I don't know how. I don't remember it, but anyways. So he didn't realize that when we rented this house on 20th, that the back garden, right across from the back garden, was the house that Giovanni Costigan lived in. And because of the political situation at the UW, we caused some anxiety and had to send word what we did because he was very worried. And Mike was painting in the dining room late at night, and I was getting up at strange hours with the baby, and we wanted them to know we were not spying on them. And we knew nothing about the pressure to sign loyalty oaths, but it was very strong. And so Jack would remember that, and anybody else that was connected with the university would remember that. and Giovanni would not sign the loyalty oath. And soon we made friends at the university, but we were happy to move to Montlake in 1965, where we're still in the same house. We were lucky. We bought a great big old house that has 3 or 4 floors, and I basically have the top 2, and Spike and my grandchildren had the bottom 2. And the reason we bought the house was because it had this huge basement, which Mike used as a studio for, 50 years, 60 years. So now my grandson, who's a musician, is also using the basement studio to print T-shirts or things, and we're always moving things around, and we keep hoping that someday it will get in better order. So, yes, I know. So I think, I don't think I'm going to hand this over to Spike, and then he can talk about whatever. What?
Whatever. Do you mind if I stand up? Because I like to kind of walk around a little bit.
It is odd sitting down.
I changed my name from Michael Spafford to Spike Mafford, Mike Spafford to Spike Mafford by switching the letters around. That was to protect my father's reputation. In 1985, we were in an exhibition together, and we were both showing as Michael Spafford, and he was getting great praise for branching out into photography, and I was being hounded for my murals in Olympia. So that not only created some distinction between us, but has continued to create a lot of confusion, which is really fun. I too went to Pomona, and I was a bio major for 2 years before I figured out that I didn't want to pursue a biology degree, and ended up as an art major. It took me at least 4 years away from my parents to realize that art was really what I wanted to do, because I just, you don't really want to be like your parents when you're growing up. But we're here to talk about the Blackbird series outside that's in the lobby. It looks amazing, so thank you for taking the care to present it in such a beautiful way. Thank you.
Yes. Yeah.
My mom just handed me this, which is an application which I believe is for a, what was it, the Dartmouth?
It might have been, we went to Dartmouth in
Yeah.
in 2000 and something. Right?
Anyway, this is an application for one of the many things that he applied for. There's a slide list that goes with this for 30 slides. That's an awful lot of work. So this artist statement that's written here kind of sums up his approach, and I thought it would be good for you to hear it. He says, I tend to work in a serial format, either selecting a subject which has multiple images, such as the Labors of Hercules, or making between 10 to 20 compositional variations on a theme, such as Perseus and Medusa. Often, I have used a triptych format to better display sequential action and a diptych format to heighten the visual sense of opposing elements. I'll repeat the same subject after the passage of 5 or 10 years. My first complete Labors of Hercules was a series of charcoal drawings done in 1966, and after 30 years and more than 50 variations, the most recent was painted in 1995. I've just completed a series of Leda and the Swan triptychs, a theme I last focused on in 1982. So this was right around 96 that he wrote this. Obviously, it's not the pictorial aspect of the story which holds as much interest for me as the formal structure which can express it. I am driven by the idea that I can do it better if I do it again. Printmaking and drawing have always been ways for me to think formally, and the cutting and printing of woodcuts has encouraged me to seek primary visual solutions rather than pictorial detail in my work. So I think that gives you an idea that he often worked by making the paintings, which are on canvas, that was stapled to the wall in the basement or wherever he was working. So he, instead of having a stretched canvas that has give to it, he would staple the canvas and gesso it right on the wall. And then he could just attack it and scrape into it and paint and develop these really rich layers of paint and history. When he goes to distill the vision of that painting in a woodblock print, he simplifies it and cuts out a lot of that detail and all that texture. So we have some examples of process and some of the materials that he's used in making these images. This series that's out in the lobby is from 1986. It was reprinted for an exhibition that we did in 2018, which we have a catalog for, if anybody's interested. It was a great show. We had four separate galleries in town showing his work for 2 straight months in 2018. And people were able to take the catalog and go from gallery to gallery. They called it the Spafford Sojourn. He was known in our neighborhood for taking long walks with the dog and knew every single person that had a dog, and most that didn't. And so now we can start with some of the slides, and just wanted to lead off with this that's about woodblock printing. Would you like me to read that, or?
What?
Well, it just says woodblock printing is a process where a flat piece of wood is drawn on and cut in reverse so that when ink and paper are applied, a print is achieved in the reverse orientation as intended. So here's a picture, or here's a block of wood. There's the light. And you can see it's got some cut marks in it. And it gets ink put on it, and then that ink is transferred to paper. We have one of the original woodblocks for that series outside in the lobby as well.
I need to interrupt 1 minute. The wood that he used for woodblock painting is Japanese wood, and it's called Nashima, and it's very hard. But he didn't. The traditional way of cutting a woodcut is with tools that have gouges of varying sizes, and you dig in and lift out. He used a mat knife. Now you all know what a mat knife is like. It has to be sharp.
There's light over here. Oh yeah, that's okay. This is a mat knife.
Yeah.
It's a simple box cutting tool, and
Yes.
this is what he used to cut his woodblocks.
So he would cut and then dip out the little pieces. He would just keep cutting and dipping. So anybody can do that. It's nothing, but it's hard on your hands, and it takes a strength. So I did like 2 or 3 woodcuts, and then I gave it up. I went to linoleum, or now people use rubber. It's wonderful. It's like cutting through butter. And that's kind of what they call it too. Buttercut.
She's making all that up.
No, I'm not. Anyway, there are enough printmakers here that I know they know everything about it. So let's see.
I'm going to roll this video here.
Okay.
This is an example of him working in the studio. This is a little printmaking studio that we have upstairs at the house. And those are his hands rolling out ink. And this gives you an idea of how he would do all of these prints on a small scale. The original series of the prints out in the lobby were printed just like this at home with a very small press. And the final edition, which is on display, was printed at a much larger print facility by a woman named Sheila Coppola, Sidereal Press. And there's some video of that coming up as well that you'll be able to see.
Really good roller. Oh God, that's all right. Okay, this is a wonderful roller. It actually, he kept his tools very clean. So, and it has a stand, so it stands up and it doesn't lay down on the glass. You usually use a piece of glass to roll the ink out on. And of course, the best inks are oil-based inks, but now people are using water-based inks. Partly for their health and partly because it's easier to clean up, but it has a different quality. There's a real difference in printing with oil-based ink and printing with water-based ink. They have now also, they're trying a mixture of oil-based and water-based ink. But I thought, well, okay, this is what he used to mix up the ink on the glass. And also, these, now you see, water-based ink comes in these ridiculously tiny tubes. And whereas oil-based ink comes in a can and you have paper that you have to keep on top of it so it doesn't dry out on the inside. And the other thing you need is a scraper to scrape. And also, he used a wooden spoon a lot. Sometimes when you print through the press, it doesn't completely print, and so then you have to go back and sometimes you just need to rub all the way around the ends, but you have to use a wooden spoon. This was not his favorite wooden spoon, but because you don't want to smear the edges. You want a curve on your spoon. So that's why you use a wooden spoon instead of...
In case any of you are thinking about taking up woodblock printing. Which
yes, right.
And that would be a fun thing to do.
Well, they can do it here. They do it.
You should do it.
You do have an art room downstairs. And with a press.
Nice.
Yes.
No wooden spoons required.
Well, maybe.
These are pictures of the blocks being printed. Those are the actual blocks that made those prints that are out in the lobby. This is at Sidereal Press, which is a favorite press of his, and Sheila Coppola is a master printmaker.
It makes a difference having a professional printer than doing it all yourself. Printmakers, people that specialize in prints, they want you to make at least 10 prints that look exactly the same, in perfect condition. Most of us are not capable of that. I mean, you can do it. You could make 50 prints to get 10. It's very persnickety. So that's why you get somebody like Sheila Coppola who really knows. That's all she does, is print prints. She makes a few prints of herself, and she's doing more work on her own now, but she was a master printmaker. And we're very lucky that she printed prints for Mike. Let me see. What else do you want to talk about?
Moving right along, we have this slide which shows the 13 ways of looking at a Blackbird, the edition that's out in the lobby. And I noted here it says Spafford's first attempt at this series was while he was a student at Pomona College. And just yesterday, we found the original copper plate that he made in 1958 and printed while a student at Pomona.
And-
Not only did we find the plate, but we also have the print. So our jumbo 4-story house, which has had 4 generations of Spaffords in it, holds a lot of treasures, and we're still finding them. What else?
I have
Yes.
one thing I wanted to say about Wallace Stevens. Is that a good is that a good time now?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. So I know. Just a minute. So the reason Mike picked 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird was because he, and I don't know if I was in the same class, but probably not, had an English class at Pomona, and he chose to write about 13 Ways of Looking at a Blackbird, and to illustrate them. And he didn't do all 13 prints, but he did, 4 or 5 or 6 etchings. And Wallace Stevens was a very interesting person because he was born in 1879 and he died in 1955. He was born in Reading, Pennsylvania, and he attended the Dutch Reformed Church and parochial school. He studied the classics in high school and he got very good grades. He ran out of money at the point, his family couldn't afford to send him to the next stage, but he earned enough money to doing odd jobs to go to Harvard after being at Reading College. And also he was always at the top of his class. So he became a writer, a reporter, and after he graduated, he went to law school. The interesting thing about him is because he had worked for a law firm for a while, and then he went to work for an insurance company. And that insurance company, I think it was the Hartford, he worked for that insurance company most of his working life. He became president of the insurance company, and it was a big insurance company. Basically, nobody really knew that he was writing poetry day and night, but he was, and he believed that the essence of poetry was change, and the essence of change was that it gives pleasure. And he believed that the spiritual is joined to the body in the afterlife through the earth as the only channel to immortality, which you think, what does that mean? But it's kind of, he became enamored of nature. And he believed that nature, like he must have written hundreds and hundreds of poems about the ocean, about water, about rivers, about birds flying. But he had a very unique way of using words. His words were extremely precise, although they were often, I find, extremely obscure. But people liked him. He met Marianne Moore and Carlos Williams, but his life as an insurance person was entirely separate, and the insurance people had no idea that he was a famous poet until he won so many awards. Then all of a sudden they took notice, But he kind of had two separate lives there. But he's the only poet that I know that actually had a career in business. Unless you know of any. Do you know of anybody? I don't know. So anyway, I think I encourage you to, if you haven't read Wallace Stevens, he wrote like 3 or 4 books of poetry, and he wrote a couple of plays. And so, and he is known for actually replacing religion with nature as a belief. But it's so subtle that it's all about words. So anyway, that's enough of that.
Speaking of words,
Yes.
we've got a few of them, and I've got the slides of the individual pieces. I don't know if we're going to have time to read through them all.
I want to read one.
Okay, you want to read one?
Well, when you okay. No, you go through these. Go through these.
You don't want me to read them all, do you? You do? Oh, okay. All right. Among 20 snowy mountains, the only moving thing was the eye of the blackbird. I was of three minds, like a tree in which there are three blackbirds. The blackbird whirled in the autumn winds. It was a small part of the pantomime. A man and a woman are one. A man and a woman and a blackbird are one. I do not know which to prefer, the beauty of inflections or the beauty of innuendos, the blackbird whistling or just after. Icicles filled the long window with barbaric glass. The shadow of the blackbird crossed it to and fro. The mood traced in the shadow an indecipherable cause. My dad could recite all of these by heart.
Yes.
Sadly,
And this is the one that "O thin men of Haddam," and I always thought Haddam was like someplace in the Far East or the Near East or the desert, but actually it's in Connecticut. So you can read that.
O thin men of Haddam, why do you imagine golden birds? Do you not see how the blackbird walks around the feet of the women about you? I know noble accents and lucid, inescapable rhythms, but I know too that the blackbird is involved in what I know. When the blackbird flew out of sight, it marked the edge of one of many circles. At the sight of blackbirds flying in green light, even the bawds of euphony would cry out sharply. He rode over Connecticut in a glass coach. Once a fear pierced him in that he mistook the shadow of his equipage for blackbirds.
Not equipage. I learned it's.
Equipage.
Where's my person?
Equipage.
Equipage. Thank you.
Yes, I even knew that.
And so in this picture of the crow, and the coach is the shadow of the coach, and in this print it's very simple. So it's gotten simpler from.
The river is moving. The blackbird must be flying. It was evening all afternoon. It was snowing, and it was going to snow. The blackbird sat in the cedar limbs.
Okay.
This is Sheila Coppola working in the studio at Sidereal Press, which is down in Tukwila. She's using the oil-based ink out of the jar, and that was a dryer that she just placed, or a wax actually, that she mixes in with the ink to make it more pliable, and also so that it doesn't dry out too fast. So that gets mixed in, and then like you need bread, you're creating a recipe there on the glass plate. And then it gets transferred to another portion of the glass plate, which is off behind her. Once it's been mixed, she lays it out like this, and then it will be smoothed out with the brayer, and then that ink is then transferred to the plate. Sheila is extremely meticulous in her approach towards printmaking, and her prints are top notch. My son worked with Sheila for a couple of weeks in helping make some of these prints, and it was a really eye-opening experience for him.
Which I love. It makes it different than a screen print, you know. The screen prints have no subtle differences.
You can see the difference between his method and hers.
She has a big press, and we have a very small hand-operated press.
Still, we end up with fingerprints and
Yes, fingerprints
globs of ink everywhere.
or uneven printing.
This is just so that you can see the actual process of the print being pulled right off. So there it is.
And no mistakes.
Yeah. I believe this was Strathmore printing paper.
It's
It's a
100% rag.
yeah.
They have two kinds, cold press and hot press, and I think cold press is always considered better for some reason. You know, it will last like forever. Sorry. It will last a very long time. I have hundreds of pieces of paper that I've used that I don't throw away because if they're white on the back, I pass them on to Montlake School. If not, I always think, oh, well, maybe I can use it over again. But because it's gone from like $1 a sheet to now it's like $5 a sheet. So it's, Margaret just gave me a bunch of paper. So I'm taken care of for a very long time.
So we're going to have to pick up the pace a little bit, I think,
Right, and
here.
move here.
This is the Opera House. You've probably been there. This was the piece that was, my father received a commission to create. Each painting in this piece is 5 by 5 feet. So it runs, 65 feet long.
And it's on the
It's on the ground floor.
ground floor, the orchestra
So
level.
the woodblock series was done after this mural was painted, and it's that process that he described about distilling the essence of the art, the painting, down into the woodblock that I thought was interesting. So I've got, let's see, oh, this is just the panel that's down there at the Opera House.
With him.
Here's a
Oh,
scrolling view
That's
of
good.
the work with my dad. I don't know why the color is off on that photograph, but
don't worry. Doesn't matter.
that's correct. These are all painted. They're 5 by 5 feet, and they're framed behind plexiglass boxes.
And the boxes are all lined up next to each other.
These are all on paper. In fact, we have a second set of these paintings, because he did 2 paintings for each stanza, and didn't tell anybody. And I ran across them in his studio, so that's pretty exciting. Don't know where they're going to end up. So quickly, on the left-hand side is the original painting. On the right-hand side is the woodblock, and I thought I would just show you how the work changes from one side to the other. it's really hard to put a gray into a woodblock print. So they're very high contrast.
There's the green coffiny, euphony.
This one I've switched just to see if everybody was still awake. Like with the labors of Hercules, where in his final labor he wrestles death, he used that as a metaphor on this final stanza. I'm not sure exactly, but he's got it's the blackbird in the cedar limbs, but there's death there. This particular series was from 1975, just so you can see how things change. As he said, he likes to come back and revisit these editions. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, and this is the 13th one with a cedar tree and a blackbird in a snowy landscape.
So, no.
Here's a picture of him at the House of Representatives. Now we're just going to kind of quickly move on to another aspect of his life, and one that was also pretty well known. He was commissioned to create these large-scale murals, actually 4 walls within the House of Representatives, and state in Olympia, Washington. Alden Mason was commissioned to create similar scale murals in the Senate chambers, and Jacob Lawrence was asked to do the rotunda in the central cupola, but he declined once he realized how Alden and my father were being treated. So there is I'll go back real quick here. This is the murals in situ. You can see the chandeliers, and the architecture of the building really contributed to how these murals are seated there. Then this woodblock series manifested in a print that is this big, right? So there's 2 of these, and they show the essence of the labors of Hercules. This is a video that I did that has him speaking in some of his own words. I think we have time to play it. Is that okay? Okay.
What is it?
One of the things I love about painting is its physicality. It has
That's all right.
a real life as a physical thing.
Yeah, I don't know if I can do that.
I feel painting somehow becomes a way of thinking as well as a way of projecting an image.
Oh, here comes our technical expert.
The process that I use in painting,
If you want to restart.
Okay, so how do you get the sound?
the way up? Yeah, it's all the way up. Okay. All right, sorry about that. We'll try that again.
one of the things I love about painting is its physicality. It has a real life as a physical thing. I feel painting somehow becomes a way of thinking as well as a way of projecting an image. The process that I use in painting allows me to work in a scientific method. So I can basically paint anything, and then I can look at it and I can say, well, is this the best it can be? And I can usually say no, and so I do it again. And I keep working that way. The next time I do it, it might be less unlike the way I want it to be. And then I'll work again and again and again until it's the least unlike the way I want it to be. And then I consider it complete. I start out by making things being reasonably naturalistic and all this, and I realize when I'm fussing around with all this stuff that it just isn't important at all, and I simplify it, because what is important isn't so much what it is you're painting, but how it looks. It has to have a reason for looking the way it looks. And that's one reason why I've selected classical mythology, because all these myths have kind of meanings, you know. Sometimes it's metaphorical, sometimes it's psychological, but there's something going on there that is very human. It's been expressed before by lots of different people, but I just thought I could do it better, or I'd try to do it better. And I realize now that I may be different from some, but I'm not a lot better. Being an artist has to do with, I don't want to be controversial. It's been thrust upon me. I see, I'm not thinking of myself as an artist. I just want to be a painter, which is different. What I want to do is make paintings of these really quite human activities that are being performed by gods and demigods, and make them so people see them again. It's kind of easy to talk about it. It's really hard to do it.
Okay, good. Do you have any questions?
Questions? No? Great. All right, we're out.
What?
Yeah, if there aren't any questions, then we did our job. Oh, wait, there's one. Yes.
Where are the pieces that were taken out of the legislature?
The question is, where did those pieces that were in the House of Representatives go? They're at Centrum College in Centralia, and they built a building, which is, I think, a theater building, to hold them. We've never seen them. You have?
I have.
Oh,
I have
well,
seen them.
she's seen them. I haven't seen
I
them.
went and looked at them. Mike would not look at them because he just didn't want to see them in the space. It is a performing arts space. They designed a space for them, but they don't bear any reference to the architecture whatsoever, so that it really doesn't make any sense. But it's okay. It's, it's like, well, I think they have Alden Masons there too. I don't think it's called Centrum College.
Not Centrum. It's in.
It's Centralia. Centralia. It's in Centralia. So for a while they wanted to be the mural capital of the world, I thought, but I don't know what happened to that, if that disappeared or.
Roger?
Anyway, they're there. They were very well made. And the one thing that you don't get, like,
Yes. Yeah. So we
when you saw them and you saw the surfaces, in pictures that they looked like black and white, but they're not. They always had some kind of colored edges or something that stuck out from underneath, which made them more interesting. And of course, they were dependent. They were designed with that strange shape because they had to fit that strange wall. Anyway, it was just one of those things that was. They had tried to do murals there before, and it didn't work. And they had tried. There were always. It was always controversial, depending on who was in charge, right? So. I think Alden's Masons looked great, but somebody said, "Oh, well, it's not compatible color." And you think, what did they mean about that? They just meant the architect wanted to do his own thing, and he didn't want Alden's competition. So, and I don't quite know where Alden's are, but I think they're down there too.
I believe they're in the library on the campus.
Oh, okay. Well, that would be better. I think it'd be better to be in a library. But anyway, it's fine. It's fine. The trouble with public art is that actually you have no control over what happens, and you know, like recently they've done some pieces by Nori Sato in a building on the waterfront, and in Seattle, and they planted trees right in front of them. And the reason they planted the trees was that they were obliged to have trees as a public place, but there was no room to put trees anyplace else. So they put them in front of the art, which completely changes it. So anyway, anything else? Yes?
Your printer, Sheila, who uses that gorgeous oil-based ink,
Yes.
is that ink contain lead?
No.
Then why, if it's not dangerous, why are people moving away toward acrylic and water-based?
The solvents involved are turpentine,
Okay.
and that
Yeah.
Anybody that uses any kind of paint, oil paint that uses solvents, is subject to lung damage if you're inhaling it. So many people now have shifted from oil-based things to watercolor, to acrylic, to avoid those spirits. But some people it doesn't seem to affect, and other people, I suppose if you lived in a haze of it, it's going to kill you. But Mike did not, it was not affected by the solvents that he used, but he got lung cancer from when he was 12, he was told to smoke, to cut his appetite. So that's what he did. And eventually, you know, but very late in his life, he got a little tumor, and eventually it killed him. But I do know a painter, Bob Jones, who did die from a lung disease, and people that I know are trying to move away from things that are bad for you to inhale. But at some point, you have to say, shall I not drink water out of a plastic container? You know, I don't know anymore. What about our pipes? What about the pipes in Seattle? You just don't. You just can't. You can't get rid of all risk. You just do the best you can, and hope for the best.
You have a question over here?
I have a particular interest in knowing this. Would it be this is a matter of interest to me. I'm intrigued by artists who paint, in the words of Andrew Wyeth, there was a thing on the wall of his last demonstration, his last exhibition here at our museum a number of years ago, and it said, "When I am moved to paint something, my aim is not to paint the something, but to paint the meaning of the something." And I'm taken by that kind of sense that he has a conviction that this is the meaning, it's meaningful to him. He understands what he did and why he did it. And he's not painting it because he wants to be acclaimed as a great artist. He's painting it because that's the creativity in him coming out. Does that make any sense to you, or is it?
Well, yes, that sounds perfectly logical. I don't know. So many different artists have so many different reasons for painting. Some of us just paint because, for me, that's what I've done for so long. I actually don't know how to not do it. And it's a total distraction. But if I feel better, if I get up in the morning and the first thing I do is perhaps get a cup of coffee and go into the studio and start working right away on something, no matter how small. But my husband used to paint at night, a lot of times late at night. And especially since in teaching at the university, he loved teaching. After he retired, he wanted to go out to the corner to the bus stop and tell people they should become artists or they should be making art. And he always tried to get people to be interested in seeing things and thinking about it. And maybe it's how you find out what you're interested in. And it doesn't have to always be important. It can be the most unimportant thing, but it somehow helps your brain focus and get somewhere. I'm not sure where, but it helps you get somewhere, you know. Okay, all right. We're done? We are.